Hello everyone, and today we're going to be talking about Adventure Phantom Knights. This is a deck that I've been holding off on making a video on again until the ladder reset so we can go against some actual decent opponents because we were struggling with that last season. And boy, it did not disappoint. This deck is so much fun, really powerful as well. There's lots of really deceptive sort of 1 and 2 card combos. So absolutely loving this deck. I'm going to be continuing to play it. I'm actually playing it on stream later today, although this probably would have passed already if you're watching this in the future. But this deck is a whole ton of fun. It's relatively cheap because a lot of the actual URs and everything are coming from generic engines that you, if you have been playing competitively, will already have. But there are a few sort of URs that you need to get for it, so you know it's not exactly like you can just pick up and play, but it's definitely not expensive. But Adventure Phantom Knights is amazing, being able to do so much, tons of spot removal. You've got extra deck locks, you've got negates, you've got trap cards, you've got recurrence, you've got graveyard effects, so you're not shut down by things like skill drain. It's honestly a ton of fun, really good deck. There is actually a card that I would recommend playing that I wasn't playing at the time of making these replays, and that is Illegal Knight. I would probably cut Stained Greaves for it. I didn't really like Stained Greaves too much. But the Illegal Knight is definitely a card that I would recommend playing that I wasn't at the time of making these taking these replays. Basically, you can special summon it out, attempt to bounce 2 of your opponent's cards back to the hand, and then give this to your opponent. And then you can simply take this guy back with the Dracoback, which is absolutely insane. You're just spinning away 2 of your opponent's cards completely free of charge if you're forced to go second. So I think the Illegal Knight definitely a card worth considering for sure. We just didn't see it in these particular replays, so this is the deck list that we had here. If you like what you're seeing and you want to see anything more like this, or if it's not your first time around here, I would recommend subscribing. Doesn't cost you anything, helps me out, helps you out, you get to see more videos like this. And yeah, with that being said, let's get into game number 1. Alrighty, getting into our first replay here, and we have quite a good hand. We're going to start off with the Rite of Aramesir. What you need to remember here, right, is what you'll do whenever you're first playing the deck, you're going to catch yourself out by attempting to normal summon Torn Scales and use its effect, because this is definitely the best of the Phantom Knights. You'll try to summon him, use his effect, but you can't do so on the same turn you activate the Rite of Aramesir, so do be careful. We're going to special summon out the Griffin Rider using Fateful Adventure. We're going to grab the Dracoback and ditch the... now we're grabbing the Enchantress and we're going to ditch the Ragged Gloves to the graveyard. Now we're going to normal summon our Torn Scales to link him off into Almirage. So now we can activate our Gloves in the grave, sending Ancient Cloak. Now whenever our Ragged Gloves is banished, the effect of Torn Scales will summon himself back to the field. So Torn Scales has 2 main effects. One, you can discard a Phantom Knight. You can discard a card to send the Phantom Knight card from your deck to the graveyard. But he has a second effect that says whenever another Phantom Knight in grave is banished, and he is also in your graveyard, you can special summon him out to the field. So we linked him off to put him in the grave, so we could then re-summon him after banishing another one of our Phantom Knights. So we're going to use this effect to pitch the Rideable Dragon to send our Wings to graveyard. Wings in grave basically just acts as a monster reborn. We're going to banish Ancient Cloak to add a Phantom Knight from deck to hand. We're going to grab Silent Boots because it can be special summoned while we control another Phantom Knight. We're going to link off into Artifact Dagda. Now we're going to summon the Water Enchantress out to the field using its effect. If you control an adventure token, you can special summon this as well. Then we're going to link these 2 off into Predaplant, Verte, Anaconda, bringing out the Royal Anaconda. Its effect then paying 2,000 life points, sending fusion materials to the graveyard, grabbing ourselves a Phoenix Enforcer. Then we forgot to activate Dagda's effect in chain to its first effect, but we're just going to do it now anyway, it doesn't matter. So Dagda then, in response to another effect on the field, activating will set artifacts safe directly from your deck. And Boots then as well, you can banish Boots from the graveyard. It would have searched our deck for Fogblade, the Phantom Knight's Fogblade, which would have been an additional monster negate, but that's fine. We're going to finish off the turn by banishing the Enchantress from the graveyard to grab ourselves the Rite of Aramesir back for next turn. So what exactly does this board do? We've got an Omni Negate here, we've got a Pop on Demand, we've got a total extra deck lock as well as an Ash Blossom. So this is pretty damn powerful. I believe this opponent here is playing Math Mech, so as soon as we pop the save, I think this person just immediately scoops it up. Yep. And you'll see that happening a lot. That's why the safe lock is so powerful, because if you look at the top decks in the game right now, virtually all of them are pretty reliant upon their extra deck, right? You have Mathmech, of course, tier 1. You have Sword Soul at tier 1, you have Branded Despia tier 2, you have things like Runic, which need their extra deck monsters to search for their field spell, you have Adamanticators, you have all of these really good top decks that rely upon the extra deck, so if you can lock them out of that, even just for a turn, you're usually able to take advantage of that and just very easily win the game. So a lot of these decks, they'll just auto-scoop the moment they see safe, but we also had Ash, we also had a ton of follow-up, we had an Omni Negate with our Griffin, so it's not like a one-trick pony. What definitely isn't just safe or bust. There's definitely a lot going on, but being able to stack a safe lock on top of it is absolutely insane. But yeah, there you go. Very quick game number 1, wanted to just show off some of the basic combos. Let's get into game number 2. Already getting into game 2 here. Our hand isn't quite as good this time, but we definitely still have plays. We're going to go for the Rite of Aramis here off the bat. We're going to normal summon out our Ragged Gloves here, which is going to grab Dragobak from deck. Then Fateful Adventure will be able to ditch the Dragobak to search our deck for the Wandering Griffin Rider. So that gives us an additional little Omni Negate there, so we're protected for the turn from things like Nibiru. We're going to link off into Almirage, Ragged Gloves, then banishing itself to send from deck to graveyard the Torn Scales. We're going to banish the Phantom Knight's Wings from the graveyard to resurrect the Torn Scales, who we will now use the effect of, pitching Dragobak to send Ancient Cloak. Dragobak then equipping onto our token from the graveyard and Ancient Cloak banishing itself to search our deck for the Phantom Knight of Silent Boots. Boots summoning itself out to the field. We're going to Exceed Summon into Levier, the Sea Dragon, so we can basically revive back our Ancient Cloak. The reason we did this is because we were going into Dagda, right? So the way Dagda works is you need to be able to activate the effect of a monster on the field in order to fully take advantage of it. So by going into Levier and then bringing this guy back, the Ancient Cloak, we can use his effect on field in order to trigger the Dagda. So Dagda now in chain is going to be setting artifacts safe directly to our field, and our Ancient Cloak is just going to boost itself by like 800 attack and defense. But his effect isn't really what we were after, it was just the ability to use an effect. Now we're going to go into Verte Anaconda. Anaconda, of course, summoning out DPE, and here we have virtually the same board. And again, this is off of what, the Rite of Aramis here, and then normal summon Ragged Gloves. The utility in your extra deck, and the fact that so many of the Phantom Knights can banish themselves to chain into other Phantom Knights, really means your deck has an absolute ton of versatility. It's very, very consistent as well. You can almost always go into Torn Scales. If you can go into Torn Scales, you can make the rest of the deck work, right? That's generally how the Phantom Knights engine works. Of course, the Rite of Aramis here is self-contained. It gives you additional discard fodder and grants you additional value off of your discards. And then we have the Anaconda Dagda package, which is basically just free wins, which is insane. So we have a really solid setup here. We're going to banish Boots from grave to grab ourselves a Fogblade, which is an extra interruption. We've got a full back row. We've got an extra deck lock. We've got our pop. We've got an Omni Negate. We've got a Monster Negate. We've got Ash. We're sitting pretty. We're confident. We're gonna pop in the draw phase. Again, I've learned my lesson. I've been taught this lesson too many times. Use it in the draw phase, right? DPE into your safe in the draw phase. It is not worth getting super polyed. It is not worth getting kaiju'd. It's not worth it. Just do it in the draw phase, right? They're gonna bring out their Runic Fountain here. Of course, having DPE would have been real nice in this situation. We are going to attempt to negate and destroy with our Griffin Rider, but they do have the Flashing Fire here. Now, the Griffin Rider must return itself back to the extra deck to resolve, which means that if it's destroyed, there's no negate. So they're gonna go a Mono Awato. We're going to negate that now, so that we can utilize our Ash Blossom this turn, but our opponent also has the Runic Destruction. Talk about just opening up broken. Runic still being a major problem here, completely able to shut down our counterplay. And they're not overly reliant upon their extra deck here on this occasion, because they just had the Terraforming and the Runic Tip and the Destruction and the Flashing Fire. They just had it all already. So, I mean, like, what do you want me to do? There's only so much that can be done there. Runic Smithing is going to banish a bunch of cards from the top of our deck, I believe 6, which is quite a hefty banish. We are running out of cards very quickly, but we're not going to be surrendering. We're going to try our best here. They're going to continue to banish. They're going to continue to activate, looping back their cards, drawing another 2, Pot of Greed, set 4, and pass. Fogblade, then we're going to use in the end phase. We're going to revive our Torn Scales, hopefully getting some level of value out of it on the following turn here. We're just going to have to hope for the best. Our Rite of Aramis here is going to activate. Now this, there can only be one, is a major problem, because now when DPE resolves, we cannot use it because we already have a Dark Warrior on our field. Ironically, the Fogblade really screwed us over. But, you know, it just sort of is what it is. They're going to pop our token now. We're going to link off into Nightmare Unicorn just so we can try and get some value from this. We target the field spell. Whether or not that was smart or if we should have targeted There Can Only Be One is up to interpretation. But we went for the field spell anyway. They're going to go Golden Droplet. This would have been the end of the game, so we have to hit this of Ash Blossom. Otherwise, we only have 5 cards left in deck. We would have drawn 1, banished 4, and then we would have lost on the following turn. We're going to draw into Silent Boots here. We're going to normal summon the Boots, link off into Access Code Talker. We still have a chance. We're still in this. We activate Access Code Talker's effect, boosting up to 53, but he has the Freezing Curses, reducing our attack points back down to 2300. We are going to revive Denier, setting Malicious back on top of the deck, giving us any sort of value we can to keep us in this game. We're going to swing for as much damage as we can, and we're going to pass back here. We're not totally out of the game just yet. Remember, all of the runic cards need to banish this number of cards from the deck in order to be usable. For example, take Freezing Curses. If Freezing Curses cannot banish 3 cards from my deck after negating an effect monster, then it cannot be activated. So with only 2 cards in our deck, he's very limited in which runic spells he actually has the ability to use. However, he can still use their effects to summon a fusion monsters. He's going to go into his fusion monster here, Munin, of course. Munin would grant him an additional 1000 life points here, so again, it's making it harder and harder for us to push for lethal damage. We're going to use Access Code Talker here, banishing 1 from grave to pop the face down. We're going to banish another from grave. We're going to take out the Munin, and we're going to banish 1 more, and we're going to take out There Can Only Be One. So now that puts us in a position, we've got 3400 points of damage on the field. We're going to swing in twice, hit him for as much as we can, as hard as we can. He's got 2200 life. We're very, very close to being able to win this. We have 1 card left on the top of our deck. They're going to go Flashing Fire to grab themselves Fangs, and this is where it all goes wrong. They do grab the Runic Fountain back from their graveyard, but it's of no use to them because they can't use any of their runic spells. But the Runic Fangs does put the hurt on us here. The last card in our deck was an Ash Blossom. We're going to use the Access Code Talker just again because we might as well. It's unaffected by monster effects, or sorry, can't be destroyed. We Exceed Summon into the Phantom Knight's Break Sword, but it's still not enough. We take out the Fangs, he takes out our Access Code Talker. We don't have the ability to push for lethal. It was the very last card in our deck. So our opponent here simply sets 2, goes to end phase, and unfortunately we don't have any cards left to draw, so we lose. And it was a valiant effort, right? So we really decided we were going to go whole hog. We were going to try our best to get a win there. We were 1 attack away from winning. If he didn't have Fangs, we would have won. But then again, saying, well, if he didn't have, well, he did. So what are you going to do about it? Runic isn't exactly an impossible matchup with this deck. You definitely do have plays. You want to utilize your DPE a lot more heavily in that particular matchup than what we did. So maybe think about how you're using the DPE in particular. Again, there are still counters to it in their deck, but again, it just gives you a bit more sort of matchup awareness. If we were utilizing our DPE better, we definitely would have had a much better chance of winning that game, but we didn't, so we didn't. Anyway, let's get into game number 3. Alrighty, getting into game 3 here. We are going second. This is a situation where the Illegal Knight would actually have been pretty handy whenever you're forced to go second. We've got the Rite of Aramis here and the Fateful Adventure in hand. Fateful Adventure, of course, not being a very good card to draw. We force our opponent to simply set 2 pass because of the Maxi, which is good for us. We're going to activate Fateful Adventure first. We're going to go for Rite of Aramis here. Rite of Aramis here, of course, summoning an adventure token, and then Fateful Adventure grabbing us the Dracoback from our deck. Now, Fateful Adventure will activate, grabbing us the Wandering Griffin Rider while pitching our Dracoback to the graveyard. Dracoback then equipping onto our adventure token, and the Wandering Griffin Rider bringing itself out to the field. Now, his other phase down here is a battle phase trap, so it's not really that big of a deal. We don't need to worry about it just yet. We summon our Griffin in defense for some reason. I don't know why we did that. We bring out Almirage here off of our Ancient Cloak. Ancient Cloak able to banish itself to search our deck for a Phantom Knights card. We go for Shade Brigandine because so long as you have no traps in your grave, you can activate it the turn you set it. We're going to bounce one of his traps back to hand. This basically means that, so let me quickly explain that play. So this particular trap card lets you, if you control another Virtual War gate in the battle phase, it lets you change the battle position of an opponent's monster. So by getting rid of his other gate, we're preventing this from being usable. So now we don't even need to worry about this. We're going to go into Dagda then. We're going to turn our adventure token into a Link Spider. Then we're going to turn our 2 monsters into an Anaconda. Anaconda paying 2k life, as well as triggering the Dagda in summoning out our DPE and setting Artifact Safe to the field. Artifact Safe, of course, completely shutting down a deck like Virtual World, which is entirely reliant upon its extra deck, right? So we're going to swing in 25, 515 to the face here, inflicting a decent enough chunk of damage, leaving our opponent on 3500. We're going to, during our turn, pop their trap card just to minimize the amount of resources they have. And then during the draw phase here, the standby phase, they didn't even give us a chance to utilize our DPE. They just immediately scooped it up. And yeah, it's as easy as that. Are you seeing how consistently we're setting up the DPE safe lock, which by itself is game winning? It's absolutely incredible. And then we have all of these other plays, extensions, back row. We have the negates, we have the board breaking off of things like the adventure engine. It's crazy. Honestly, very, very impressed. Let's get into game number 4. And of course, getting into our last game, it would not be a proper showcase if all I did was show you situations where it was going well. Of course, many situations in which you're playing this deck, most hands are generally able to do something. Even the simplest of normal summons can normally accomplish some type of goal. But we are going to resolve a maxi here against Branded Despia, although in this occasion I don't think it slows him down at all. I think he just goes whole hog here, grabbing the Branded Lost, activating it so that now he can go for his Albion the Shrouded Dragon, pitching Opening to Grave to basically mulligan the card, which is a really good use of that card, right? It's not one that I've ever really considered before, but being able to just pitch an Opening to Grave to protect your fusions is insane. He's going for the Raz Disciple lock here. Raz Disciple, so basically, well, we'll let him resolve the combo first and then I'll talk about it. But essentially what he's trying to do is lock us out of being able to summon monsters at all. He's going to go Mirror Jade here, Mirror Jade then sending a card to the grave to banish his Alibur then, setting 1, and during the end phase, Albion the Branded Dragon is going to set Branded Expulsion to his field, and this is where the combo comes to fruition here. So what's going to happen is during the standby phase, yes, he's going to activate Branded Expulsion to either tribute a fusion monster or return 2 fusion monsters from grave back to the deck. And again, he only has 1 in grave, so he will be forced to tribute the Mirror Jade, and what he'll do is he'll target 2 non-fusion monsters in the graveyards. He'll special summon 1 to my field and 1 to his, I believe, right? Yes. Or he can summon them both to his field instead, but that's not the point, right? So what he wants to do is he wants to tribute this, grab 2 monsters, give me 1 and give him 1. The monster he's going to be giving me, of course, is going to be the Raz Disciple, because so long as you control this card, you cannot special summon monsters, which is pretty nuts. So that's the idea. We, of course, were lucky enough to have Ghost Spell in hand. Ghost Spell completely negates Expulsion, so he's going nowhere off of that anytime soon. I do believe our opponent also has another layer of interruption here. We go Silent Boots, we link off Silent Boots into Almirage. Then we activate Silent Boots, banishing it from the graveyard to grab the Shade Brigadine, which gives us an additional summon. We summon it out to the field here, then we link it off into Link Spider. Link Spider then, now being an effect monster, we can link these 2 off into Verte Anaconda. I think he has an Imperm here. He has... Oh no, he doesn't. He lets us go into DPE. Oh, my bad. I thought he interrupted us here. There it is. Yeah, I knew he had something. So then we finally got our plays and combos out, and then he just super polys us away, and no, it's not looking so good. He's gonna grab Albion the Shrouded Dragon here. So the Branded Lost and Albion the Shrouded Dragon combo is pretty interesting. It's not one I've ever played myself before, but I might have to revisit it sometime soon. I haven't played actual Branded Despia in such a long time. We're going to go Max C here for the second time, a second Maxi resolving against our opponent here, but at this stage it may be simply too late. We've only got 6k life, we've got an open field, and while we can stop a little bit of damage, we can't stop a lot of it. We go Fog Blade here to try and stop the Dragstapelia, but there is the Cosmic Cyclone shutting down our Fog Blade, as well as banishing it so that we can't even use its graveyard effect, right? And that's a particularly bad thing, because we could have used its couldn't we use its graveyard effect? We actually couldn't have. We didn't have any Phantom Knights in grave. I take that back. They are going to go Branded in red here, fusing 2 off into Masquerade the Blazing Dragon. We of course only have 1500 life points, but one of the monsters I used for the fusion was Ad Libitum of Despia, the other of course being Mercurier. And then Branded Lost is going to activate on a third chain link here. So Branded Lost will search his deck for a Fallen of Albaz or a monster that lists it, so Albion makes its way back. Then he's got the Tri-Brigade, which is going to grab him the Fallen of Albaz from his deck. And lastly, Ad Libitum is going to revive the Mirror Jade. While the Masquerade can't attack directly, the Mirror Jade definitely can. We activate our Forbidden Droplet just because we discard 2, we negate 2, but it ultimately doesn't matter. We still don't have enough life points to take the hit. And there you go. Super Poly for the win. Sometimes your opponent just has the out and there's nothing you can do about it. Super Poly, of course, being a pretty big weakness of this deck. Luckily, it's not ridiculously common anymore, but it definitely holds its place in the meta, so it is a card you're going to need to be very, very wary of, because your opponent will use it against you. Luckily, not all of the monsters you're playing in terms of your actual end board are going to be dark. For example, your Griffin is Wind, your Adventure Token is Earth. The only real concern that you would need to address is you probably don't want to have Verte Anaconda and DPE on the field at the same time, which means during your turn, you might simply want to pop the Verte Anaconda and the DPE. During the standby phase then of the following turn, you can revive the DPE and then instigate the Scythe Lock, but you probably don't want to be having 2 dark monsters on your field at the same time, just, you know, to minimize your exposure to counters like Super Poly, because even if they only have it 1 in 5 matches, that's still 1 in 5 more matches you could be winning. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there for this gameplay. I'm not going to linger too much on it. Let's get into the deck list. Alrighty, getting into the deck profile then. So, first things first, like we always do, we're going to remove all of the hand traps and optional cards and tech cards and whatever. So we're going to start off with Maximum C, double R, double Ash, double Ghost Bell. We've got the double Call by the Grave. We've got triple Forbidden Droplet. I do want to just give a quick spotlight to this card. This card is absolutely amazing in this deck because not only is it a powerful card, but all of your Phantom Knights benefit from being in the graveyard, which means that this is a really easy way to secure a lot of wins against a lot of very tricky opponents. So bear in mind, yes, it is a tech card, but it is an exceptionally powerful tech card. So triple that. And yes, so we're not running Imperm or anything like that purely because we don't want to have traps in grave, so we can make sure our Shade Brigandine is usable at all times. So no Imperm in this list, but you're more than free to play it. There's 11 spots with which you can do whatever you want, but this is essentially the core of the deck, at least the version that we're playing. So first things first, we're going to talk about the Phantom Knights cards, right? So they all have an effect either on the field or in the hand, and they all have an effect in the graveyard. So for example, Phantom Knights of Ancient Cloaks, while on the field, can boost the attack and defense points of any dark monster by 800 and switch itself to defense, which of course is not a good effect, but it is sometimes useful for triggering off something like Artifact Dagda like you saw in the gameplay. Its more important effect, and what makes this card very powerful, is its graveyard effect, where you can banish it from the grave to add a Phantom Knights card from your deck to your hand. Now bear in mind that excludes Phantom Knight's Wing because it doesn't say "the" in the name, which I think is ridiculously stupid, but it is what it is. But this card will grab you virtually any of your Phantom Knight cards, and normally starts off a lot of your combos, is a really powerful midpoint. Generally speaking, definitely one of the more powerful Phantom Knights. Then you've got Phantom Knights of Silent Boots. As long as you control another Phantom Knights monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, making it one of the deck's best extenders, and you can banish it from the graveyard to grab yourself a Phantom Knights spell or trap card. Notice how this doesn't say "the" in it, which means you can search for the wing. So basically, extends out, special summons onto the field, and then searches for a spell or trap in the grave. Awesome. Then you've got Ragged Gloves, which can banish itself from the graveyard to send another Phantom Knights card from deck to grave, so it basically just gives you your pick of the litter. If a monster exceeds summon using it, it gains 1000 attack points, which, like I said, doesn't come up very often, but it's mostly for its graveyard effect that's here. You have Phantom Knight of Stained Greaves. Now this one is an interesting one. This one's sort of the most far removed from the rest. So if another Phantom Knights monster is special summoned to your field, you can special summon this card from your hand and then increase its level by 1. You can banish it from the graveyard to summon a Phantom Knights monster from your hand and then boost its level by 1. So it's a bit of an extender, helps you sort of, you know, turbo a bunch of monsters out. The whole boosting of the level by 1 is to work alongside other level 4 monsters in your deck to try and bring out things like Raider's Knight, which we'll get to that in a minute. But this card, I would say, if you really wanted to cut down on this engine at all, if that was something you were interested in, I would say cut this one first. It's just the least impactful, but I think it's decent. I think if you wanted to put in like the illegal knight, Stained Greaves would be your first cut for it, but again, like I said, pretty solid card. Then we have Torn Scales, which is the most powerful Phantom Knights card in my opinion, at least the main deck monsters. You discard a card to send a Phantom Knights card from deck to graveyard, which means again it gives you your free pick of whatever you want. And then if this card is in your graveyard and another Phantom Knights is banished from the grave, you can special summon this card out to the field. You'll normally be using that to subvert the normal summon restriction off of things like Rite of Aramesir. So that is a very, very useful effect. You'll be using it quite a lot. And yeah, this guy, generally speaking, is pretty nuts. Puts really useful cards into your graveyard. Then, in terms of the rest of the Phantom Knights cards, we have, I'm going to say Foolish Burial is basically a part of the Phantom Knights cards. You just pitch any of your monsters to grave. Brutal. You have Raider's Wing, which in its text is always treated as the Phantom Knights card. If a Dark Exceed monster has this card as material, that monster becomes untargetable. We were recently playing this deck on stream, and holy crap does this card enable some crazy plays. So Raider's Wing is absolutely, I think a one-of is almost mandatory, absolutely, considering how nuts that little effect is. It can also special summon itself by detaching a material from a Dark Exceed monster, but it's mainly the whole not being able to be targeted thing for your Arc Rebellion Exceed Dragon. Bonkers, absolutely nuts. And lastly, we have the trap cards. We have the Phantom Knights Wing, which will give a monster on your field 500 attack, and the first time it would be destroyed, it is not. That effect, of course, is very mediocre. The reason we want it is because you can banish it from your graveyard to revive a Phantom Knights card in your grave. So it's a bit of an extender. It's a good card to discard off of Torn Scales. It's a good card to send from deck to graveyard to get yourself additional extension. Generally speaking, very good card. The Phantom Knights of Shade Brigandine. Basically, if you have no traps in your graveyard, you can activate this card the turn on which it is set. What it does basically is special summon itself out to the field as a level 4 Dark Warrior, which is pretty interesting. It just helps an awful lot with either your Link Climbs or going into something like your Raider's Knight because it's a level 4. So again, very useful, is only really useful whenever you don't have any other traps in grave, which is why we're not playing any trap cards other than the Phantom Knights cards, because all of these cards can banish themselves from grave. Lastly, we're playing triple Phantom Knights Fogblade. Target an effect monster in the field, negate its effects, and that monster cannot attack. It is basically just a searchable Fiendish Chain, and when it's destroyed and leaves the field, you can banish it from your graveyard, and you can again resurrect any of your Phantom Knights. So it's Fiendish Chain, except it gives you follow-up extension, and it's searchable off of things like boots. Generally speaking, it's a really good card. You want to be playing multiple of it. You'll be setting it to the field off of a bunch of your different cards. So yeah, really good. Then we have the adventure cards, of course. We have the Water Enchantress of the Temple, which can either... well, first of all, we'll talk about the Rite of Aramesir, right? Because this is the card around which the entire adventure engine works. If you control no adventure token, you will special summon an adventure token, which is 2000 attack and defense to your field. And if you don't control Fateful Adventure, you can place Fateful Adventure onto your field. You cannot activate the effects of a normal summoned monster during the turn in which you use this card. So no normal summon effects for you, which is fine because almost none of the Phantom Knights want to do that. The only time you would be tempted to is with Torn Scales, and like I said, there's some very easy ways of circumventing that. So don't worry about that, it's not going to be an obstacle at all. So this card summons a token and activates Fateful Adventure straight from your deck. Well, what does Fateful Adventure do? It has two main effects. Its first effect, whenever a monster is summoned to the field, if you can search your deck for a equip spell that lists adventure token in its text, basically. So basically, you'll be searching for the Dracoback, the Rideable Dragon. So whenever a monster is summoned, search for Dracoback. Its second effect says you can add from deck to hand a monster that lists an adventure token in its text, and then discard a card. So you will either add the likes of Water Enchantress or your Wandering Griffin Rider, or if you felt like playing it, you could also search for the Illegal Knight. A big reason as to why you would potentially play this card. So this will let you search for it, and then you just discard a card afterwards, which again could be any of your Phantom Knights who love being in the grave. It could be your Water Enchantress who likes being in the grave. It could be anything. So basically, it searches two cards, your Dracoback and either your Enchantress or your Griffin Rider. It'll normally be the Griffin Rider. Then you've got, we'll talk about Dracoback. While it's equipped to a token, or a normal monster in general, but normally it'll be the adventure token, you get to target a card in your opponent's field, bounce it back to hand. And if this card is ever sent to the graveyard, once per turn, you get to re-equip it then onto a normal monster on the field. So if you, for example, are activating Fateful Adventure, you will normal summon a card, search your deck for Dracoback, then you will activate this card's effect, discard the Dracoback to search your deck for the adventure monster of your choosing, like the Wandering Griffin Rider, and then Dracoback will activate in the graveyard, equipping itself onto your adventure token, so you don't actually lose any cards. So it's a nice little way of maintaining card advantage. It can also be useful for ditching a bunch of your Revival cards or your Phantom Knights to grave. But yeah. Then you've got the Water Enchantress of the Temple, limited to 1, and there's a reason for that. This card can be banished from your hand or your graveyard in order to search your deck for the Rite of Aramesir. So it's very useful because not only can it be used in your hand, of course you can also pitch it to your graveyard either through one of your many discard effects, or you can send it to the grave off of Cherubini, which we will get to in a moment. So it's very easy to put this card into the graveyard, and once it's there, you can then banish it to grab yourself the Rite of Aramesir, and then you can just get gaming from there. Absolutely crazy. Then we have, lastly, our Wandering Griffin Rider. Wandering Griffin Rider can be special summoned to the field while you either A, don't control any monsters, or B, if you control an adventure token, summon this guy out to the field, and so long as you control an adventure token, at any point your opponent activates a card, he can shuffle himself back into the deck to negate that card's activation and destroy it. So it's basically a searchable Omni Negate that summons itself to the field. Really powerful, and recyclable of course. And that is the adventure package that we're playing in this deck. And lastly, we have the trimmings. We of course have our Destiny heroes, Denier and Malicious, as well as Fusion Destiny, purely for going into DPE. We have Foolish Burial, of course, which pitches all of these useful monsters to the graveyard, virtually all of them you want in the grave. You have Reinforcements of the Army, which basically makes the vast majority of your deck searchable, and it's an extra copy of all of these cards. Really useful. So that's the main deck then. So you've got your Phantom Knights, you've got your Adventure Engine, and you've got some trimmings, and they all work together beautifully. Not only is each individual engine very powerful, they also blend together seamlessly. Now getting into the extra deck is where it gets even spicier then. So of course we're going to open up with DPE. Very easy to summon in this deck. There's no reason not to play it. Alongside all of these Dark Extenders that can be used to go into the rest of your deck. This card absolutely mandatory, 100%. Levier the Sea Dragon allows you to detach a material to target a banished level 4 or lower and summon it to your field. So it's an easy way to recycle your Water Enchantress, or to recycle some of your Phantom Knights that you might have banished earlier in the turn. So this card is really good extender. You saw it being used in the gameplay to extend in the Adagda, so really good. The Phantom Knights of Breaksword. So this card can basically detach a material, target a card you control and a card your opponent controls, and destroy them both. So it's like an ignition effect DPE. So, you know, baby mode DPE. And if this card is destroyed, you can target 2 Phantom Knights cards with the same level in your graveyard, special summon them, and boost their level by 1. So the idea is you summon this card, pop himself and one of their cards, so they go neg 1. This guy will re-summon the materials used for his summon and boost them up by 1 level each. Then you can use them to go into Raider's Knight, which is our next monster we're talking about. Raider's Knight can then detach a material to special summon the Ark Rebellion Exceed Dragon on top of itself, using itself as material, which is absolutely bonkers. So you break sword, pop itself into Raider's Knight. Raider's Knight detaches a material to go into the Ark Rebellion Exceed Dragon, which is one of your best tools for one-shotting your opponent. What does it do? Well, for a start, this Exceed Summon card cannot be destroyed by card effects, so they're not going to be able to DPE it, they're not going to be able to hit it with any fancy card effects. It can of course be banished and can still be targeted unless you use something like Raider's Wing for its summon, so there are still weaknesses there, but you can patch them out quite easily. Its effect basically states that you can detach a material, and this card gains the attack points of the original attack points of all of our monsters on the field, and if there's a Dark Exceed monster as material, you negate the effects of all of our face-up monsters on the field, and for the rest of the turn only this card can attack. So you're going to boost your attack points up to crazy numbers, and you're just going to swing at them for game. This pairs beautifully with a card like Forbidden Droplet. If you were watching our stream, you would have seen that we were doing things like reducing their attack points way down with Droplet, and then gaining all of their original attack points and just swinging over them with the Ark Rebellion Exceed Dragon. Really nuts card, so it is. And then we have the Divine Arsenal Zeus. which is just here as a fallback. I honestly think that this is one of the weakest cards in the extra deck, purely because you almost never want to use it. So if you had a particular card you wanted to play and you were looking for a slot, I would say your first cut is Zeus. To be perfectly honest, as nuts as that sounds, it is. So just bear that in mind. Zeus is somewhat mediocre in this deck, to be honest, because your other Exceed monsters either A, aren't going to be sticking around for very long, or B, are absolutely bonkers. So getting into the Link monsters, 2 mandatory monsters you have to play, Link Spider and Salamangreat Almirage. You need to be able to turn your Brigadine and your adventure tokens and things into effect monsters for your Link plays. So these 2 cards, you need to play them. Then Cherubini. Cherubini is one of the better Link monsters in the deck. You need 2 level 3 monsters specifically. Luckily, virtually all of our Phantom Knights are level 3, as well as the Water Enchantress and Denier also happen to be level 3s, so a lot of targets there. So what you can do basically is he has a whole bunch of effects, but the only one that's actually useful is you can send a level 3 monster from your deck to the graveyard to boost this card's attack and defense by the attack and defense of the monster you sent. Now, all that's really useful for is you can basically use him to pitch any of your Phantom Knights of your choosing or the Water Enchantress of the Temple to the graveyard to utilize their effects while they're there. So this card basically lets you extend into any of your cards, most notably the Water Enchantress of the Temple, right? Because you can typically find a way to finagle your way into any of your Phantom Knights, but being able to get your Water Enchantress into the graveyard, that's not quite as easy. So Cherubini makes that possible, which is amazing. We've got Masquerena, because of course we have Masquerena. It's a really powerful card. There's no reason not to play Masquerena. Basically lets you Link Summon on your opponent's turn, and a monster that uses this as material cannot be destroyed by card effects, which is pretty good. We're playing Artifact Dagda and Predaplant Verte Anaconda. I'm going to pair these together because these 2 are part of the main combo of the deck, the main end board going first. Dagda, so when this card is face up, if the effect of another card on the field is activated, this card will chain to that and will set directly from your deck Artifact Scythe, right? So that's going to set that straight from the deck. I don't think we talked about Artifact Scythe. So when this set card in your spell and trap card zone is destroyed during your opponent's turn, it will resummon itself, and when it does, it will lock your opponent out of using their extra deck for the duration of that turn. So the idea is you want to set Scythe to the field off of Dagda, then you want to use your DPE to pop the Scythe on your opponent's turn at the very beginning of their turn to completely lock them out of their extra deck. And that's why Verte Anaconda's here, in order to summon DPE. Then for some generic links, we've got the Unicorn, Nightmare Unicorn, spin a card back to their deck, and Access Code Talker being able to boost up your card, boost up itself, pop a bunch of cards and go in for game. Very useful play, you'll be doing that quite a lot. And lastly, we have the Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardiche. During your main phase, send a Phantom Knights monster from your deck to the graveyard, then set a Phantom Knight spell or trap card directly to your spell and trap card zone. That is busted because you're able to not only utilize the effects of any of your Phantom Knights at all in the graveyard by sending it straight there, you also get to grab yourself a Fogblade as a monster negate as well. So basically you get to search your deck for Fogblade and pitch any of your Phantom Knights, which is absolutely insane. It also has another effect where if a Dark Exceed monster is summoned to a zone it points to, get the target a card on the field and destroy it. You'll not be using that effect very often, but full deck and extra deck, this deck is criminally underrated. I honestly, even when I was doing these replays, I was thinking to myself, man, this is really strong. I can't believe that people aren't playing this. And then we went on stream, and holy crap, it is so strong. We went on like an 8-win streak. It was absolutely insane. So absolutely, this deck is very, very, very heavily underrated. I think it's very heavily underrepresented, and I'm looking forward to seeing hopefully a little bit more of this on the ladder, because this deck is crazy. If you guys don't want to play it, I'll play it for you. I'm no way shy about continuing to play a deck that is this fun and this powerful. So with that, again, if you've got this far in the video for some reason and you haven't subscribed and you haven't liked the video, why not? Obviously you like what you're seeing. If you want to see anything more of it, just subscribe. You'll see the videos coming out and you'll be doing me a favor. And with that, I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.